back, everybody. Welcome to the Music Cities Podcast, Episode 3. Jimmy Buffett, the master of creating places people want to be. So today we're going to explore one of the most important economic development lessons ever disguised as just a simple song about a guy drinking margaritas and missing his salt shaker. See, Jimmy Buffett didn't just create music. He created the ultimate demonstration of my core economic development definition: creating places people want to be. And the remarkable thing about it is he did it with a place that didn't even exist. It was only in his imagination, and then in the imagination of millions eventually. Long before any physical Margaritaville properties were built, before any resorts or restaurant franchises, there were millions and millions of people, including me, already desperately wanting to be in Margaritaville. And this was all based solely on the vision he created in his song in 1977. He achieved every economic developer's dream of creating an emotional connection to a place purely through storytelling and authentic vision. No market analysis, no data, no bureaucracy, just stories and emotions and reality. And so today we're going to dissect how this fictional paradise became a billion-dollar economic empire. Because, see, it's not just a story, an economic development story of placemaking. It's an economic development story of entrepreneurship and scaling and vision. And so what does all this teach us about authentic place branding, community building, and the real work of economic development? You see, it's not economic developers, it's not us economic developers that do the economic development. We talk about economic development. It's people like Jimmy Buffett who do the real economic development. It's the entrepreneurs, and it's the innovators, and it's the developers, and it's the community members, and it's the tribes like we talked about last time. We're here to be a guide. So let's start with what some people miss about Margaritaville. It's not a song about drinking, it's a song about a place. And what that place represents: relaxation and escape, freedom from your everyday grind of your ordinary life. And so when he sings about wasting away in Margaritaville, he's creating this complete sense of place. You can feel the warm breeze, you can taste the salt, see the sunset, feel the hammock, on your back. You imagine yourself there, you live that lifestyle, you're in that part of that world. That itself, how many people were inspired to change their lifestyle based on that song? How many people moved to Florida? I moved to Florida partly because of Jimmy Buffett and his music. Not specifically Margaritaville, but more of a collection of his music, which I'd really gotten to know when I was in the Army, stationed overseas, and really dug into when I was stationed at Hunter Army Airfield in Savannah, where I met a gentleman, Jimmy Hurricane, one night playing at a bar called Port Royale on River Street there in Savannah. And I asked him if he knew a song by a different artist, and he said he knew the lyrics but not the chords, and asked me to come up and play the chords. And then he started asking me if I knew other songs, and a lot of those songs that he asked me were Jimmy Buffett songs, and I knew a bunch of them. And so I started going and sitting in, sometimes on Friday nights or Saturday nights, with Jimmy Hurricane there on River Street, and playing and really feeling these songs, because I was in a place that it made sense, Port Royale, and you could almost see the pirates coming in off the walls, off these ballast rock walls that were in there, and everything just fit. Most importantly, the place fit in 1992 on River Street in Savannah, and it created for me this connection between lifestyle and the music of Jimmy Buffett that ultimately is part of, not entirely the reason, but part of how I ended up in Miami. But that's what successful economic development does. It creates these compelling visions of places where people want to be. But what Buffett's achievement is so remarkable is again, that fact that Margaritaville was a fictional place. Just think about the economic impact of that song. It was on the Billboard 100 in 1977 for, I think, 22 weeks. But it created this lifestyle brand that's generated over $1 billion in economic value through its resorts and its restaurants and its community. So it did become this awesome entrepreneurship and scaling story. And it all started with a 3.5 minute song about a fictional place. So this demonstrates something that's fundamental about place-based economic development that you have to understand if that's the approach you're taking with your cities. And it's the approach you should be taking with your cities, because transactional economic development is the past. You can keep doing it, but transactional economic development, jobs first, economic development, that's not what makes people want to be in your community anymore. The emotional connection comes first. The physical infrastructure follows. And then things like what I'm going to do for a job or other things come after that. Jobs aren't the reason people chase places anymore. Cities do it backwards. You build the infrastructure and then you wonder why people don't physically, or you wonder why people don't. You build the infrastructure and you wonder why people don't feel emotionally connected to the place. You build the infrastructure you wanted to build and you build what you wanted to build, but there's nothing authentic about it. Then you want to try and force people to like it. Buffett proved that authentic place branding starts with that compelling story that makes people genuinely want to be there, that there's something in it for them, that there's something in there that they connect to. The song created the market demand. I mean, everything else was just about meeting demand that already existed. And everything that Buffett did was authentic. It still resonated once maybe he was not, I'm going to say, not as much of an authentic figure, but it was still always there because he was he started off and he was authentically that street troubadour that all of us, start off as, and most of us give up our music dream after, not very long of not making it. But he held out and he stuck to it, as we talked about in the first episode. And he got that lightning in the bottle moment, and he lived that Key West experience and lifestyle that he sang about, so that it was authentic. I mean, it was, people still seek out right there, that picture. The picture back there is of his old house in Key West, and you can look at it and you see there in that place, that house, the connection to what he was creating, that tribe of parrot heads connected to. The other thing is it's a type of music that you didn't know you needed until you heard it. It's not a type of music that anybody, again, market analysis could not have told you, hey, we need to create this type of island country rock. It had to be created, and then people had to discover it and realize that's what they were waiting for. So it was the song and it was his product that created the market demand. He created his niche that he owned. He owned 100% of his genre. Everyone else was just meeting demand that already existed and trying to get their little scrap, their little thin sliver of the pie. But Margaritaville alone would not have created this billion-dollar empire. A great song, a great vision, a great connection. But what transformed it was Buffett's genius at building that tribe around it and around this place that he created. The Parrot Heads are one of the most powerful music tribes in history, and that identity completely centered around that place. They don't just love Jimmy's music; they love the lifestyle. They love the mentality of escapism and the community of people who share all of those values. And so, how did he build that tribal devotion? And he had, his music, not just Margaritaville, is a style that is consistent. And it's authentic storytelling that people can connect to or aspire to. And no matter what album or what song, once Margaritaville came out and once people connected to it, everything that he did reinforced that Margaritaville brand. Every album, every concert, every interaction that he had, it strengthened the vision and the concept of that laid-back paradise. And he projected that lifestyle, and that he was living that lifestyle even when he was up secluded in his mansion in Palm Beach. Secondly, he made Parrot Heads active participants in creating the Margaritaville experience, and he was very accessible. The concerts were these tropical parties. Fans dressed the part. Inflatable parrots. Collectively created the atmosphere Buffett sang about. And he was accessible. The picture there, under the picture of his house, is a small 100-person showcase that I was fortunate enough to attend maybe 25 years ago that later his assistant got autographed for me. Not long before he passed, he was seen and had a good picture taken of him, just coming out by himself. This guy who's worth $1 billion coming out of Sweat Records here in Little Haiti, over by where Churchill's was, buying some records there at that small independent record store. And he facilitated the ability of the Parrot Heads to build their community. Most cities have a Parrot Head club all over the country. And so you have these local gathering places for people who shared that vision. These were not fan clubs. It's not like finding the New York Giants bar and going on Sundays to watch the game in a city. These were lifestyle communities that engaged, interacted with each other year round. And then he had the tools and the platforms for the Parrot Heads to connect with each other. There's an annual meeting of the Minds Conference, which is the annual gathering of Parrot Heads. There's the local club events. There's shared rituals amongst the clubs. And so all of these things sustained that community even when he was not performing. Really importantly, he didn't compromise on that authentic vision that created the tribal devotion in the first place. He could have gone more country. He could have gone more rock. He could have gone more mainstream to reach broader audiences. Instead, he stayed true to that tropical Rock Island lifestyle that made Margaritaville special. And this is something you're going to hear as a theme over and over and over in this podcast. Stay true to yourself. Do not compromise. Do not apologize. You heard it in the first episode with Rick Rubin talking about what he said in his book, The Creative Act, of you create for yourself, not the audience. If you create something authentic, the audience will respond. We see this in our own approach. We don't operate at Business Flare and the Flare Heads. We don't operate as a typical consulting or advisory firm, and we don't apologize for it. We do it our way, and some people like it, some people may not, and that's perfectly fine. But we're creating for ourselves. It's the same way with the podcast. We're going to do the podcast that we want to do, and we hope that it resonates with you, and we hope that you connect with it and you find it informative. In our next episode, when we talk about innovation and baby metal, you're going to hear that same lesson. Never compromise, never apologize. Stay true to what you're doing, because that's what differentiates you. Again, it's that theme of the unfair advantage or the purple cow. That's a common theme through everything that we talk about. You can do that, and you can be unique, not be replicable, capitalize on your unfair advantage, or you can lose your fearlessness, become generic, and race everybody to the bottom and just be another place or another brand. The economic result of not compromising, the Parrot Heads generate huge economic impact in the cities where they go. Hotels book in advance. They mobilize around these travel gatherings that are far beyond concert attendance. It's sort of like the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl at Joe Robbie Stadium here in Miami, or the Hard Rock Stadium now, maybe it gets 80,000, maybe 90,000 people, but you go to South, 50 people out on South Beach for during Super Bowl week. You've got all these other events. You look at Art Basel down here. You have all these other things happening around the main event. When you have these tribes, whether it's the Deadheads, Buffett, the Swifties, you have all these other things happening besides the concert attendance itself. So this economic model works because of those shared values, the lifestyle aspirations, not these manufactured marketing campaigns. And so that's really important for cities, that connection to place that people have, that reason they want to be there. It's a lifestyle, it's quality of life. It's not because of a shiny ad campaign, glitzy, glittery. But then he didn't just create this fictional place that people want to be. More people want to be in that fictional place than want to be in your city, or want to be in my city, or want to be in almost any city. So when I look at how he transformed this 3.5-minute song into a fictional place, into a tribe, and then into an empire, I decided to look at it through our Business Flair framework. our opportunity areas, our principles. It's the 5 things that make up success, unique success. And it's clear it's not accidental. Every time we go back and apply these 5 principles to a success story, we see these things present, even if they're not consciously present during the evolution of a brand. First, what did he preserve? He preserved that authentic laid-back tropical lifestyle that inspired the original song. He never tried to update or modernize that Margaritaville concept as trends changed. The brand has always stayed true to what it was in 1977. Escapism, relaxation. That was the competitive advantage. That was what he provided. That vision and feeling he provided could not be replicated by anyone else trying to do it. Space. What was the enhancement? You got to have a key enhancement. That's one of the principles. Well, he enhanced that experience through the concerts and improving the quality of the concerts, through the merchandise and professional merchandise, and very carefully curated extensions of the brand. But every enhancement, what it did was it amplified that original vision. Again, it still preserved Margaritaville for what it was. It didn't dilute it. Everything reinforced the Margaritaville lifestyle, whether it was a themed restaurant, a cocktail shaker, clothing. It all was truly Margaritaville. He exposed this massive hidden demand for escapist lifestyle branding that the entertainment industry had missed. Again, it's something you don't know. It's where innovation and entrepreneurship comes in and blows away market analysis. It's why we wrote the book Gut Sandwich, because market analysis and data only goes so far. Gap analysis and supply and demand analysis completely misses the potential of the entrepreneur. You didn't know you needed Margaritaville until you had it. But a focus group could have never told you that it's what people wanted. Industry market research data would have never told you that's what people needed. But when they heard it, they knew they wanted it. Millions of people wanted to live that Margaritaville lifestyle and not just listen to the song. And so he revealed this market demand for that authentic place-based experience. Research couldn't have done that, but he didn't only reveal it, he owned it. He made focused investments. So what was the investment? He made these focused investments in his authentic differentiator. A touring infrastructure, and it created these tropical paradise experiences in Cincinnati, where the biggest concentration of parrot heads are based. Merchandise that people could take Margaritaville home. And then business partnerships that were very carefully quality controlled, but which extended the brand. Again, every investment reinforced that unique position. They didn't go for broad appeal. And then what they capitalize on? Well, this is the real genius. Again, he didn't try to compete in an oversaturated music industry. He left Nashville. That's how he got to Key West. He went down there with Jerry Jeff Walker in Walker's old Packard. He was lost in Nashville amongst thousands of aspiring country artists. But in Key West, he created his own category and he owned 100% market share. The only authentic tropical rock lifestyle brand. So competition for him became irrelevant. You can look at it. You know that the business results speak for themselves. Margaritaville Holdings is worth more than $1 billion. Resort chains, restaurants, retirement communities now, casinos, vacation clubs. And it's all built on the foundation of a fictional place people desperately wanted to be, but then has become multiple real places. But what do economic developers miss about this? The physical business has succeeded because the emotional connection to the place already existed. The resorts work because people already loved Margaritaville. The restaurants thrive not because they're serving food. They're serving a lifestyle. So what Jimmy Buffett proved was that authentic place branding is what creates the market demand first. And then the economic development follows to meet that demand. So you can create that vision, that aspirational place. You can think of places. There are good examples where they've created that aspirational vision and people realize maybe this is a place I want to be. So what's the economic development lesson to kind of as we get towards closing? What does his empire teach us about real economic development? Well, it's first that emotional connection to the place comes before the physical infrastructure, as I was mentioned. Most cities do this backwards. They think they're setting the table, they build things, and then they try to create the emotional connection. Buffett created that connection first, and people demanded the physical infrastructure to support their lifestyle aspirations. Second, that authentic place branding can't be focus grouped or committee designed. Margaritaville works because it represents a genuine vision that Jimmy had of an ideal lifestyle. It was not a manufactured marketing concept. So when you try to create authentic place brands by hiring consulting firms and having focus groups and stakeholder committees, you're going to get generic results. You're going to get, best practices, and rather than be yourself, you're going to be a not as good version of some other community where maybe that consultant did the same idea. Successful place brands involve real human needs and desires, and they involve the real connection of people to that place. We talked about that in the second episode, which was about tribes. Margaritaville is not about margaritas or tropical drinks. It's about escape and relaxation and freedom from the stress of life. Cities, if you understand what those human needs are and your place can deliver and meet those needs, you're authentically addressing what creates a compelling place brand. And then that compelling place brand, you've got to have a consistent long-term commitment to that vision that's authentic. Don't dilute it. Don't dilute it. Don't compromise. Jimmy Buffett reinforced that brand for over 45 years without compromising, without apologizing, fearlessly taking the risks and the chance. Well, will other people like it? Who cares? Just do it. Let's do it. Cities that change their branding every few years, you're going to get a new administration, you get a new mayor. You're never going to build consistency that's going to generate an authentic connection. If you have it and you start changing it, you may lose it. I think you can look at a place like South Beach and see that in what we call the Cinderella years of South Beach, sort of, late 80s into the early 90s, maybe mid 90s, by 2000, early 2000s, those authentic connections that had created that place were disappearing. If you look at it today, it's a very different place. It's a very successful place. Again, just like there are bands that have a successful fan base, they don't have a tribe. Fifth, that tribal community amplifies the place branding exponentially. Again, that's what happened in South Beach. At least as that identity was evolving. The Parrot Heads, they didn't consume the brand. They were evangelists. They took it on the road. They liked to talk about it, tell people about it, tell people why they connect to it, why they made a lifestyle decision based on a song. So cities, you can create those opportunities. You need your ambassadors. You need your evangelists for your community. And there's a lot of communities out there that have that. And then there's other places. A great place that fits this mold is Disney. And look at what they did. Happiest place on earth. And they have an army of evangelists out there. It's a great example of a tribe. It's not a music tribe, but it's another good example of how a tribe has been built. Successful place brands, the other good lesson here, and from all of these big four that we're talking about, they create their own economic category instead of trying to compete in an existing market. Again, you've got places, I think, that you can look at and do that. I think, I haven't taken this view of it. I've done a lot of thinking about South Beach and how in my time there and how it evolved, and understanding even how it evolved and revitalized even before I got there. But sort of, I hadn't really looked at it from this perspective of how much of it was creating its own category, rather than trying to compete for scraps of a bigger category. And it might be something interesting to look at following up this conversation. But Margaritaville, it doesn't compete with other resort chains. It doesn't compete with other restaurant brands. It owns its tropical lifestyle category completely. So for a city to apply this, it just starts with authentic storytelling that makes people genuinely want to be in your city, want to be in your place. What are the lifestyle amenities and values and experiences that your community offers? What is your equivalent to Margaritaville's laid-back tropical paradise? Find those shared place brand values. It's not geographic proximity anymore. The successful places, it's about the people who believe in what that place represents, people and businesses, and what brings together the people who truly love your community for those reasons that make it a great place. These consistent high quality experiences, find those that reinforce that place brand. Then, the interaction that visitors have with your community should strengthen their own emotional connection and should reinforce that place brand the same way that everything that a new convert experiences when they join the Parrot Head Club is a reinforcement of Margaritaville. Help facilitate the connections between people who share those visions. Give them tools and platforms and ways to connect and engage with one another. Again, one of the things that connects people to place is that ability and those opportunities to engage with each other, being open and welcoming, and with people who share those interests and those values. Cities do not compromise your authentic identity. Maintain your differentiation. Don't just look for the latest best practice that somebody presents at a League of Cities meeting and say, well, that's what we want to do. You're not that city. Don't do what that city did. Be yourself. Again, Jimmy Buffett could have made Margaritaville more generic. He could have broadened its appeal and gone after wider audiences. But it actually would have destroyed what made it special, and it would have collapsed the empire. So how would I put this? Cities, if you're trying to be everything to everyone, you're going to end up being nothing to nobody. Important, remember that your place brand is creating a desire, not awareness. Your stories have to compel people to want to be part of the story. People knew that Margaritaville was not a real place, but they desperately wanted it to be real. So that's the power of that authentic branding. I mean, it's creating demand for experiences that don't yet exist. And so the Margaritaville empire is more than just successful business strategy. It's proof authentic place branding can create this sustainable competitive advantage. And look at, it can last decades. And just like, we're now 30 years after the death of Jerry Garcia, and the Deadhead, tribe still has momentum, still moves on. The same thing with the Parrot Heads. We're approaching, I think, 2 years since Jimmy died, and it's still a successful business empire. It goes back to 1977. So again, 50 years almost. It's outlasted music trends, hair metal, grunge, country pop, different things. It's outlasted shifting consumer preferences. It's built on these authentic place brand values, and those will transcend temporary market conditions unless you start messing with them. That's why trendy places fail. They try to stay trendy, which means they adapt away from what they are. So when you create that real connection to a place, you've created a competitive advantage, an unfair advantage, and generic strategies aren't going to work for it and aren't going to be able to replicate it. So, conventional marketing campaigns end up being a place that a lot of cities spend money on, while those authentic assets are underdeveloped. They're missing the fundamental lessons of something like Margaritaville. There's too much fear built in, or risk seen in telling those certain types of stories. They get caught up in politics and how public money should be used, because there's a lack of understanding both in professional staff and especially on the dais of how to take these lessons and implement them and stick to them regardless of audience reaction. You got to have that genuine experience, and you're not going to create that from the dais, and you're not going to create that from City Hall. You have to create a place where the creators can create that. So, the result of what Buffett did is these sustainable competitive advantages. Competitors can't replicate it because they can't authentically be what he was, and they can't authentically be what you are if you're building based on that. If you're building generic, somebody can easily take it away from you. They can build generic better. So Jimmy Buffett created, it's the demonstration of our definition of economic development, which is creating places people want to be. He did it with a place that only existed in the imagination, And then the model worked because it took those fundamental human desires for escape and community and authentic lifestyle. He created the demand for it. And then he took that into building the physical places and bringing it to the people. With that, we'll close for today. Remember, Kevin@businessflair.net. If you have a compelling, interesting, hidden story of economic development hidden somewhere in music, we want to hear about it. Let us know. We'll see if maybe it's something that we can fit into a future episode. Meanwhile, in our next episode, we're going to do a deep dive into the baby metal innovation framework and show you one of the most incredible, compelling, and I think best examples of entrepreneurial innovation that I've ever seen. And you're going to learn how 3 Japanese schoolgirls created a $100 million market by refusing to fit into existing categories. Again, own your category and be fearless and unapologetic about it. So until then, think about it. What's your community's equivalent of Margaritaville? What's the lifestyle? What's the experience that your place could offer that would make people want to be there? The best economic development that you can do is not just going to attract visitors to your community. It's going to create that tribal devotion around the experiences that your competitors can't replicate. And this is The Music Cities Podcast. I'm Kevin Crowder. Visit themusiccities.com to explore how music drives authentic economic development. Remember, if Jimmy Buffett can create $1 billion empire from a fictional place, imagine what your community can do with authentic assets. Until next time, peace out.